Finance. I'm your host, Melanie Parker. Focus on Finance is brought to you by the Consumer Education Division of the Right Legacy Group. I'm going to jump right in because I'm so excited about this topic. I'm not going to lie. Okay,
You're easily excited.
Just for the, I am. Those of you who don't know, I can imagine, Daniel London, welcome, Executive Director of the LTADD. I'm going to read this and get it right.
Sure.
Lincoln Trail Area Development District.
You nailed it. Great job.
And I am, because I wrote it down. But I read about this study that we're leaning into here, and I was excited for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to keep you all in suspense. Public transportation study.
Yes.
And I could tell you what I've gleaned just from that fabulous article and interview with you and some of your team members, the News Enterprise. I moved to Hardin County 27 years ago, young mom, small kids. And
we came here about the same time, it sounds like.
Right, there you go. And boy, have we watched some things change and grow, right?
It's changed dramatically.
Over the years. And I know now I have a car, I'm good. But back then, wow, could I have used this?
Sure, sure.
So I'm excited for the people who could possibly benefit.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to turn it over to you. And can you just give me a broad stroke here of what it is, and we'll go from there.
I can.
Okay.
So let's start with some history, if that's,
sure,
if that's
absolutely.
Okay. So I came here in '98 to work for U.S. Representative Ron Lewis.
Oh.
And in the early 2000s, it was around 2000, he was able to secure some federal funds actually for a transportation system here.
Really?
Now, that money ended up not being utilized and turned back. and the reason why, and I want to set the stage for this as we talk about the study, the reason why is there's a lot of sustainment costs to a public transportation system.
That's
so
one of my many questions.
Absolutely. So I want everyone to understand that.
Right.
And that falls back on the taxpayers because obviously it has to go has to go somewhere. Everything does.
Right.
And so local leadership at that time felt like they couldn't sustain it. Very different picture than economically than what we have now. So that money was turned back.
Right. It's bigger than just a good idea, right?
It is, and it takes a lot of work. And you can look to Louisville to see the challenges. You know, they're always on the news about having to cut routes and the budget trouble, et cetera. And certainly you don't want to get in that situation where it's very difficult, especially since we're talking about finance.
Right.
So the MPO, which was established in 2003, stands for Metropolitan Planning Organization. It's a federal designation for a concentrated urban area, 50,000 or more, which Elizabethtown, Radcliffe, and Meade County, so it's Hardin and Meade County, qualify as. There's extra federal and state dollars that are allocated to that for transportation planning.
Gotcha.
That's road planning, just the study that we're going to talk about, et cetera.
Right, and there's information about that on the website
there is.
that we'll share later, because I drilled down into that earlier before I came.
And that website, before I forget it, because I kept looking at my notes to make sure, because I don't visit it every day, is Radcliffe-Elizabethtown-MPO. So if you want to visit that to check it out, please do that, because there's a survey on there which we'll talk about in a moment.
Good.
So through the MPO, some of the great things, for example, we've been able to do is the study, the Patriot Parkway. That's a prime example. One of the first projects that was done through the MPO that was developed out of our office through the MPO and started as an idea there and was funded. We also did this exact mass transit study in 2005 and 2013.
I thought I'd heard just scuttles, in the past about it. So I was excited to see it come back around.
And there was, let's face it, there was some skepticism when it was done. And local leaders said, hey, let's take a look, see what it looks like. And let's see if anything's changed with sustainability and the dollars that are available.
Sure.
And they didn't feel that it had. And so obviously the plan wasn't adopted. And as a result, obviously we have some turnover of local elected officials. This past year, really probably about this time last year, we started having discussions within the MPO about, hey, should we take another look at mass transit? We're getting a lot of input.
Right. Well, and we've grown so much.
We have.
And maybe timing is everything.
It is. It is. The economic picture has changed completely.
Drastically,
from
truly.
A year ago, 2 years ago, pick your time.
And projecting forward.
It is. And of course, we have the study through the chamber that you're very familiar with that predicts we could grow by as much as 30,000 over the next 5 to 7 years in that time frame.
Yes.
That's going to be a lot of people.
Right.
And let's face it, we can't build enough roads to handle all that. So mass transit would certainly help. And so the determination based upon the feedback from the public to their elected officials, which is how this is supposed to go, we took on the transit study. That's $160,000 cost, all funded through federal, state dollars. Nothing,
Like grants
nothing
kind of
locally.
things?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Part of
Do you
the
have a grant
allocation
writer
through
on
the
your
MPO,
staff?
we do. We have several.
Bravo.
Which is nice. And so the study has been funded. It started approximately back in this past September, and we should be finished by this September.
Oh,
Of course,
okay.
that could ebb and flow a little bit, but we're excited about seeing the results of it and seeing where we stand.
On this study, so let's define what that would be. What are you looking at? Are you looking at growth? Are you looking at past, future? What is it you're looking for at that
So
study?
they'll look at the previous two studies and what they suggested and what they looked at in terms of economic growth and trends and traffic patterns, number of people on the roads.
Because
we
we've
know
had
all
a
the
lot of
traffic
changes
counts.
in traffic lately.
We just go to the mall and you'll find out.
Right.
you
What
can't
do they call
get
the
there.
J-turn?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
At first, I was like everybody else. Why do I have to go this way if I want to go that way? But then at the end of the day, I just have to trust the process and the roundabouts and all of that. And I think they're whimsical. They don't bother me a bit. But
Once
boy,
you get used to 'em.
some
used to 'em.
people just yeah.
It brings out a little road rage every once in a
It
while.
does.
And let's not even talk about roundabouts. And I'm very clear, we don't do roundabouts. So I want to get that. I want to get that.
I heard somebody from the city once in a meeting call them windabouts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do know sometimes we have officials, we have people in place for these things, for these reasons. Trust the process.
Absolutely.
Trust that they know what they're doing. They don't just go willy-nilly with a shovel and put stuff in.
There's studies behind this.
Yes.
There's accident data, et cetera. And talking about roundabouts, a perfect example.
Yeah.
It reduces accidents.
It does.
I'm the number one offender. When I see a yellow light and sometimes even a shade of red, I stomp it. And we're all in this town bad about it.
Right. I won't tell
and
anybody.
it's
It's between you and me and them.
I
We won't tell anybody.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And roundabouts stop that and make it safer for all of us. But
Sure.
going back to this study, it's going to. We tell everyone everything's on the table, and that's true. Trains, planes, and buses.
Sure. Transparency is important.
It is.
When you're spending people's money.
And so we're truly looking at all, or the consultants that we've hired are truly looking at all options. Now, are we going to go from nothing to a subway system? No, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And we're not going to go from nothing to light rail. Typically, how it goes is you start with a small busing system.
Although, you mentioned that we have a lot of caverns
It could be a pretty
Kentucky.
train drive.
Right. You may have just planted a seed. No, I'm just kidding.
And on
I'm just kidding.
weekends you could do
We do
dinner
have.
and a train ride.
We're
so.
known for our caves here in Kentucky,
Absolutely.
so that'll be a discussion for another day.
And
Yeah.
I've been in communities that have light rail. I'm a big fan of light rail. You just run it up and down Dixie, it would flourish. And someday we might get there.
Maybe.
But initially, what they'll look at fixed routes for busing, will it work? What is the anticipated ridership, utilization of it? What's the cost of it, the startup cost, and the sustainment cost? And a little what has changed as well. City officials, for example, have gone to Georgetown, and Mayor Gregory, who's doing a fine job,
Definitely.
has met with them, and we've learned through that process, and we'll learn more through the study, about extra dollars that are out there now for sustainment that wasn't there before to take some of the
Awesome.
burden off the taxpayers. So this study's designed to bring all that data together, and so our local officials can make an informed decision. And we know your work through private business as well as the chamber, their transportation is a barrier to workforce.
Absolutely.
As well.
Truly.
We don't have a good handle on what those numbers are, but it's a need.
Right.
And
I'm sure ECTC could share some great
well, and
statistics
Megan
for you just
Stiff
for
and I
students.
have talked, absolutely
Sure.
talked a lot, and they, of course, they were big advocates of this study as
doubt.
a result.
Well, you want to see people succeed.
You do, and getting them from job to job obviously is one of those ways, and it's added value. It's what we refer to in the Army as a force multiplier, and so we're looking forward to these results and seeing what we can bring to the
Sure.
table.
So when you say dedicated routes, I'm assuming that's part of the study.
Fixed routes, right?
Fixed routes.
Yeah,
There
yes,
you go.
ma'am.
So would there be a drop off at the mall? Would there be a drop off,
could.
in front of Walmart? I don't know.
Sure,
Is it,
yeah.
or would it be just to factories, apartments, those types of
Sure.
things? What all do you look at?
Yeah, so all the above.
Okay.
And obviously for it to work, it's going to have to be from dense area to dense area.
Gotcha.
And some of that may be, you see in other communities, park and rides, park, jump on bus, jump on train, whatever the case
Right.
may be, that may be a factor
Drive
of
to
it as
Glendale.
well. Correct.
Catch that ride to Glendale, because I
Um,
can't even imagine what their traffic will be.
Yeah, I cannot.
I'm sure there's studies.
I think we got a little bit of a picture when they had the bomb threat, so on, which obviously was
Yeah.
quite a challenge traffic standpoint. So it'll really look at all those points.
Right.
And
I was curious
and
about the
give you a
retail
strong-
aspect of it.
Yeah,
You know?
and obviously it has to work in terms of the ridership and where the volume's going to be, at least initially, as we
Right.
grow and grow into the system.
Right.
We've really tried not to push the consultants, hey, look at this, look at that. We want this to be a wide open picture, and we don't want to taint what the results will
And the
look like.
consultants, where are they from?
So Michael Baker Consultants, they're a nationwide company that they
Okay.
work. In fact, they're doing work on the Sherman Minton Bridge recently when they shut that down. As you probably saw, Michael Baker Consultants
Wow.
they are a huge company,
Yeah.
and they do great work. In fact, the program manager that we're working with is a young lady by the name of Patty Dunaway, who used to be the chief district engineer for Kentucky Transportation Cabinet,
Okay.
District 4 here.
Gotcha. So
Know
they
her
know
very
what they're
well.
talking about.
Absolutely know what they're doing. She was part of previous studies, part of the MPO. She knows this area well,
Yeah.
and they're going to do a great job. And we're
Great.
super excited.
I was
about that.
curious when I started reading about it, because I'm thinking, is this something where some 14-year-olds could hop on and get a ride to Freeman Lake to play Frisbee? You know,
Sure.
or is it going to be dedicated towards, and wonderfully so, people getting just to the factories
Yeah.
and to ECTC,
And it'll be open to everyone.
all of the things.
Absolutely,
Okay.
be open to everyone.
Right.
So it will not be, you used the word dedicated earlier, I'll steal that. It will not be dedicated to one group or another.
Okay.
It will truly be public
Truly
transportation.
public.
It will. It
I
will,
like that.
absolutely.
So-
And again, I want to caution everyone, we are responsible for, I compare it to like Fox News. We report and you decide.
Right.
So we're
And
going
that is great.
we're going to bring out the report. We're going to give that to the elected officials, the policymakers, and they'll have conversations with their constituents. They'll have conversations with their legislative body, and then they will make the decision.
And that
So
is
it's
another
important.
component that super excited me
It
about
is.
this. I love when people of authority ask other people input. Who doesn't want to share their opinion?
That's right.
Everybody is like, let me tell you what I think. That is just our
And usually you don't even have to
society.
solicit it,
No,
so.
and it's not even generational based. It's
Right.
from my 3-year-old grandson all the way up into our very seasoned folks. Everyone wants to tell you what they think.
They do. And we are super excited as well because, as you know, we have a survey that's ongoing through 5 April, which is a Friday, if I remember correctly. So if you have not completed the survey, please complete
Right.
it.
So
'cause
it's
that's your
ongoing
input.
now.
It is. That is
Okay.
correct. That is
Gotcha.
correct. As of last week, we'd had over 1,000 responses.
Okay.
And
let's-
we
let's get those numbers up.
I agree. And I fully expect, now that's more than we've had previously.
I think it's wonderful.
Which is great.
Yes.
I've seen it all over Facebook, so I know
Yeah,
it's
they
getting
just
out.
don't know what they don't know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we need that input.
Yes.
We absolutely need that. Because going back to what you were talking about, do we need to stop here? Do we need to target this group
Right.
particularly?
Speaking
in
of
this part?
Target, will it
That's
go to
right.
Target?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The-
Exactly. Good point.
You know, and I was curious because years ago, as a mom with 3 little kids, and my car won't start, and I didn't have any family here, and I've got to
What do you do?
get my kids. I got to get to that laundromat.
Yeah.
You know, so my kids can have clean clothes for school next week. I have a very different life now.
Sure.
So what
you
I
remember
needed-
those struggles.
I do. I will always remember those struggles, and I will always have the mindset to help people that now currently have those struggles. But looking at it now from where I am, I have my vehicle. So then I'm like, so what is this going to cost me? You know, and just from other people.
Yeah.
And also, when I'm driving down Dixie in front of the mall, how inconvenient is it going to be if there's a big bus stopping right there?
Sure.
You know, I'm trying to think about what people will think about
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
it doesn't affect them directly, but
Sure.
maybe indirectly.
Well, you know, I have a friend of mine that, I love what he says. He's an African-American friend of mine. He's like a brother to me. He says, we're all guilty of the bubble we live in, and those experiences. And it's so true because we forget, it's easy to forget about those struggles we had. Thank goodness
Right.
you haven't. And it's easy to think, in our life, this big bus is in my way and I can't get out, but
I've got 10 minutes to get to my meeting.
Right. But you think about what that bus is doing and helping other citizens produce. Before we came on, we were talking about taxes. We need everybody working and sharing in the tax load.
Yes.
And the economic output.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what this is about, is to make sure that everyone has adequate transportation so they have a better quality of life, they can contribute to our community, and we spread the wealth, so to speak. And that's ultimately what this is about.
I love it. Because on those days, sometimes that car's just not going to start.
That's right, exactly. And they need help.
Sometimes you come out and you've got a flat tire and you've just started your job and you've got half an hour to clock in.
And your boss just might not be understanding.
Exactly.
So now, so we might have a future, an option in the future.
Well, and we are very, our economic development here is so superb. And I'm not going to lie, I'm very proud to live where I live.
Same.
Military afforded me great opportunities. I've lived all over the world. I chose Elizabethtown, Kentucky, Hardin County as my home. I've never regretted that.
Which is a huge compliment.
Yes, yes. And so Blue Oval and Alltech and, and I shouldn't even name any because there's just so many. I don't want to leave anybody out.
You always get in trouble.
Right, you will. But there's just so many opportunities. But I hear time and time and time again, transportation is a barrier when it comes to folks.
Absolutely, and we see that on a regular basis. I mean, I've even seen it with some of my employees, and we talk. We have a workforce program in our office that we work with our factories, and we continue to hear childcare and workforce are the two biggest problems for their workforce, getting them back and forth to work.
I agree. And that's why I super encourage seasoned folks like myself who may be listening or watching to remember. That may not be where you are now, knock on that wood, but please remember what it was like to be a young adult in Hardin County trying to get to work.
Absolutely, because it's not easy.
Right.
And today it's harder than it was when you and I were struggling because things cost a lot more.
Yes, they truly do. And I mean, what all is in this survey? Because I'm going back to the office. I am jumping on there, and I'm going to share that link with all my adult children and my bonus their spouses and all my friends because it's super important.
Yeah. And it really gets down to it's measuring individual needs. What are your needs for transportation? What would you like to see? Again, gets into stops. Would you like to see a bus system? Would you like to see a rail system? And it's
system.
It's not a So it's not super long. It's not super complicated.
Good.
But we're really trying to get every boots on ground. What does it look like from your bubble that I just referenced that would help you? And that's really what we're trying to ascertain in that survey.
Absolutely. I'm very excited about that because it's ownership.
It is.
We are I say we. I'm like, I'm on your team now, man.
I want that. Everybody, we need to be one big team, believe me.
You all are asking people, help me help you.
Absolutely. And that's what we're for. So LTAD, we are a regional collaborator focused on regionalization to do things for local governments they can't do for themselves and the citizens to increase the quality of life. And this is one of the key issues where we can do that. Absolutely.
I like that. Now, there is something we have in place now. I don't know if that filters through you, and it's TAC.
Yeah, correct. It does not. So it's a separate entity. We have used them in the past, and their focus now, they will be a part of this solution as well, and they're at the table in terms of this study. Right now, they are more dedicated, again, using the word you used earlier, to the disabled and underprivileged within our community.
I know they're great about getting people to doctor's appointments.
They are. And they're a phenomenally run organization.
To groceries and those types of things.
And so they're laser focused in on need, and they've done a great job with that. And of course, this wouldn't replace that; it would be a value add in that mission and what they're doing.
Okay,
because it's very different circumstances.
Sure, absolutely, and it's all necessity.
It is absolutely
ultimately. And I'm sure there are a lot of parents of teenagers right now going, I'm going to go and I'm going to register
and get them on a bus and
survey, and do all those things right now. So I guess at the end of the day, we talked about sustainability. So are there grants out there? What do you think it may affect our taxes? What do you think?
So there is sustainability dollars out there. Now again, depending on how elaborate the system is, how large it is, will depend on the dollars necessary for sustainment. The easy part, and we've seen that based on the history that I gave you earlier, is getting it started and getting the money to buy buses and get everything set up. But it's the ongoing cost that's always a challenge, and that falls to the organization that's established to run it. I'll compare
Would that be you all?
No, it would not. So it would be a separate entity, a joint entity among the governments involved.
Okay.
So much like TARC in Louisville, and then obviously they would be responsible for the sustainability of it through ridership costs and so on. So the business model, you're in business, I'm in business. We make a certain number of facts and assumptions when we build a business plan.
Sure.
Same thing will happen here, and depending on the utilization of it, the revenue coming in and the expenses going out, then we'll determine what the sustainability cost is. Okay. And through this study will give us a pretty good target. And again, part of the purpose of the study and the surveys from everyone coming in, so we can understand need and what the ridership may be.
Who your primary demographic would
absolutely.
be. All of those things.
And then the consultant can put those numbers for us to give us at least a starting point. It's not going to be perfect, by no means. Numbers never are.
Sure.
When you're building a business plan, to see what that looks like. Ultimately, it's important for everyone to understand this. Any deficit falls back on taxpayers. It's that simple. So if a transit system costs $1 million a year, they bring in $500,000 a year. $500,000 got to come from somewhere because it's not free. And that's going to come from the taxpayer. So that is critically important for folks to understand.
And that's
Nothing
a tough
is
one.
free.
That is not a fun word.
It's not.
It's just not a fun word. But I can say even if and I can only speak for myself, but even if I never ever had any reason to step foot on any of those buses, I would be perfectly okay with helping pay for it.
Well, and
I mean that.
I agree.
I do.
And I speak for me as a taxpayer. I hate taxes.
Right.
And I don't want to pay them. No one does. No one enjoys writing a check to the IRS.
Well, the beautiful side of this is it's all very transparent.
It is.
I don't like paying taxes when I don't know where they're going.
Right, I agree. And
What am I
that's an
doing
excellent
this
point
for?
where I was going. At least at the local level, you can get your arms wrapped around what it's providing you. Filling potholes, paving new roads, providing people.
Putting in those roundabouts.
Yeah, it's right. That's right.
I'm being awful.
You know that.
Yeah.
And getting people to work and so on. You have a keen understanding of what that is. And I think the most important thing to keep in mind is these buses aren't or mass transportation. It's not going to be to give people rides around town to have something to do during the day.
Well, there may be some people, I don't know.
It might be. It might
Right.
be. Go for a joyride.
Yeah.
But this is helping people be more productive within our society, and that benefits all of us.
Well, I think it's logical because we are growing. We're just, the best
and we
little
haven't
small.
seen anything yet.
Yes, the best small big town or the best big small town, depending on who you talk to's perspective and what the topic is at that time. But the changes, the upgrading, the J-turns, the roundabouts. It's traffic. It's economic development. It's growth. And this just, humble little me, just seems like a logical next step.
It is. And we think so too, hence doing the study. And, you talk about the economic development going on within the region. Obviously, Blue West K is getting all the attention right now, and rightfully so. It's a big animal at 5,000 jobs.
Truly.
But you look at Nucor over in Meade County, which is part of this study.
Right.
When they first announced they were locating in Meade County in Brandenburg, 400 jobs. They're at 700 now.
Wow.
So they almost doubled from the time that they announced to the time that they
Just think
opened.
of the children that affects.
It's huge.
Right?
And when we started this study, we were really just focused in on Hardin County, and Judge Executive Koch over there said, no, wait a minute. The MPO extends to Meade County, and he's right. Let's do Meade County as well, because we're going to get a lot of this as well.
Sure.
And he's spot on. So we can't forget how that impacts them. And obviously, there's a lot of commuters from Meade County to Fort Knox. Right. There's a lot of commuters from Meade County to Hardin County, other jobs.
See,
and
that's
so this
going
is really
so much
regional.
bigger than I even thought.
Yes.
My small mind, because I'm, in my bubble, is just thinking, somebody from E-Town getting to Blue Oval or, to Alltech or, all these other wonderful places. But so the system, the way they're looking at the study now, if let's say I live in E-Town, potentially, based on the study, where could I get to outside of E-Town?
Yeah, so you could go to E-Town, Radcliffe, Fort Knox, Brandenburg, Glendale, any of that. So, I mean, it's taking all of it into
They do have Jailhouse
into
Pizza in
account.
Brandenburg.
That's true. I mean, you could jump on and take a trip.
Right.
But they've got the same challenges we have in that area.
Okay.
And you look at again, you remember coming here as a result of the military. Most of our folks that serve in the military, whether it be civilian or soldier, they're used to mass transit systems.
They are.
And so when they get here, they're like, where's the
What's
trains
happening?
and buses? So we, growing up here, we're used to driving.
We are.
That's all we've
because
ever done.
I've always said, as a business person in Hardin County, I can get to anywhere in E-Town in 12.6 minutes.
Yeah, that's probably changed recently. But
Yes. Yes. Because I know every shortcut in town.
Right.
But wow, the possibilities are endless.
They are endless, and it can be huge, and again, be a huge impact on us in terms of moving people. And again, the state of Kentucky, rightfully so, from a taxpayer standpoint, is always reactive in building roads because you have to see what the commuter patterns are going to be to spend those dollars.
Yes, it's a very big animal.
Wisely. It is, and so having a mass transit system will take pressure off our roads, and it'll extend the life of those.
Sounds so fancy-pantsy.
Well. So it's
Well, I moved here from Las Vegas 28 years ago or something like that, and it was very hard. But now,
a little culture shock.
Truly, and I've never regretted it. But I do see that this is something I love. The small town, big town thing we have going, the energy, the vibe we have here.
It's nice.
But it would be it makes sense.
It does. It does.
Absolutely makes
and like
sense.
I said, it's a logical next step.
It is.
We think. But,
It is.
But again, have some grace with the elected officials because this is a big decision.
Right. And boy, do we have some great ones in.
We do. We do.
I love the between Cerisi, because West Point's in.
He reminds everyone
Hardin
of
County.
that.
Yeah, Cerisi. We've got Ogden. We've got JJ. I go by last name. It's all in who I know. Pam,
Right.
JJ, and our mayor here in E-Town. They work so well together.
They do, and they're all friends, which is nice.
And they're fun. They're funny to watch
are.
together.
And they enjoy each other in life.
And passionate.
Which is nice.
They all
are.
genuinely care.
And again, they've got to make sure it's right because none of us want them to be in a position where say it's going to cost X, and there's like business plan was wrong. It's going to cost us double. No one wants to have to foot that bill. So this will
and
not
nobody wants
be
to
easy.
answer that.
No, this will not be an easy decision.
Sure.
And we've got to make sure we get it as
Sure.
close to right as possible.
Yeah.
Won't be perfect, but
Right.
we're going to try and get there.
Well, I was hoping we could drill down more into what Lincoln Trail Ad does because I was overwhelmed by your website.
It's a lot.
Right.
And I could overwhelm you even more.
Right.
So.
But what I'd love to do is invite you to come back another time
love to.
because
I'd love to.
there's
Appreciate
so much. We're out of time.
You and I, that's a miracle. You and I
Right.
could talk for hours probably. 'Cause
Right.
I think we're talkers.
Exactly. Yes. And passionate and love where we live.
Absolutely.
We love our neighbors, our
great place.
community.
Great place.
And I cannot wait to see how this comes out.
I can't
I'll be
either.
super disappointed if it doesn't pass, but I'll understand that the powers that be know more than I do.
Sure.
So, Daniel, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your
I appreciate
time.
the opportunity
I
very much.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. And I
You
hope
are
I do get to come back.
definitely in the right job, doing the right
Well,
things
thank
for
you.
the right
God,
reasons.
God has blessed me. It's been great.
Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm Melanie with Focus on Finance, the Right Legacy Group, and we'll have Daniel back.